Hello there, and welcome to Doctor Who Radio Show. I'm That's the Way It Goes, Nine, and these are
Stephen Price, Wales, UK.
Pepper Clown, Clown Town.
Jimmy Porto, upstate New York.
Yep, that's Stephen Price, good old monk of Magnesia, and for the very first time, a distant relative of Pissy the Clown, Pepper Clown. From the same mother, brother from the same mother type thing, is it?
Well, we're not really related, but we went to high school together at Clown Town High.
Ah, I see. Well, in this episode of Doctor Who Radio Show, two subjects mainly may evolve into something else. But first, it's something which, well, I get the feeling it's a real thing, but I'm not sure if it is. Apple, apparently, according to one website, Dark Matter, is suing Doctor Who because the TARDIS breaches copyright of their time machine product, apparently. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to bloody work, since Doctor Who has been around for 50 years, and the first mobile phone call wasn't actually done until about 1971, 2 or 3.
Actually, according to darkmatterfanzine.com, it's a spoof, a parody. It's not a real story, but it's been circulating the internet and people have been taking it as real. It's a spoof article.
Oh.
The article says Apple's suing the BBC because the TARDIS is a rectangular box which facilitates access to fixed points in time. Therefore, it infringes upon the registered time machine trademark as a device of functional equivalence. This is a spoof article along the same lines as the spoof that Samson paid Apple in nickels.
Oh, see. Is this a website that does lots of spoofs, not just Doctor Who?
No, this is a website reporting that it is a spoof. It is not the website that did the spoof. It's reporting that the article is a spoof.
That's the same one that we're looking at, Dark Matter. I thought it was very convincing, but this isn't actually that strange, because there wasn't there, Pepper, a feud between the two Apples, the Beatles Apples, and also the Steve Jobs Apples when he was, well, still alive, obviously.
Yeah, that's right, man.
And well, Apple. Oh, would you say, everyone, that's where they possibly got the idea for the satire?
Yep, because Apple is constantly suing people for any reason under the sun. That is where they got the idea for the satire.
Yeah, Apple and Disney, baby. Those two are so crazy.
It does seem a bit odd that anything Beatles-wise. Oh, of course, the Beatles' first hit was in 1963, just like the first episode of Doctor Who itself.
Well, the Beatles created Apple Records, and
Yeah.
Apple had to buy, had to get the rights from the Beatles to use Apple, to use Apple and to use their symbol. They had to get the rights from the Beatles because Apple is not the same as Apple Records.
Ah, see. And there was the case of a Irish pub that I thought was perfectly harmless, called Lennon, a tribute with lots of nice pictures and memorabilia to John Lennon, of course. And that also got aggro, just like the whole feud of, using the copyright name of Apple, etc. But this was about John Lennon and Yoko Ono, the one who wasn't actually technically part of the Beatles, basically telling them to stop it or we'll sue you in a rather sort of, well, not a very all you need is love type way. All you need is lawyers.
The Beatles actually sued Apple once. The agreement that the Beatles had with Apple was Apple can use the name Apple and use the Apple symbol as long as Apple didn't manufacture anything that made sound. When the Apple came out with a computer and the computer had sound, they were sued by the Beatles. And the Beatles won.
Anything
But-
that
But they were allowed to continue. They were allowed to continue making sound.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, that makes sense. I'm a bit startled by that.
If she was still around, the Beatles would probably sue Eve, baby.
Yeah. I've read a book called, I believe it was called You Never Give Me Your Money, and that looked at the history of the Beatles when they were together, actually before, during and after they broke up, all from the financial side of things. And a lot of the Beatles' bitterness towards each other was due to money and who was getting what and where and so forth.
That's the reason George Harrison started to write songs, because Lennon and McCartney were earning more than Ringo and George, because they were earning more because they were writing songs and they were getting paid for the songs. So George Harrison decided to become a songwriter too, just so he can get the money at the extra money.
And the BBC and Doctor Who, in terms of copyright, as I think Pepper and Stephen Price will know as well, is not that unsurprising at all, or unfamiliar, because there was, of course, the State of Terry Nation and the Daleks. The BBC, like I think the Cybermen as well, and K9 and other characters created by the copyrights owned by the actual creators or their children or something like that. The BBC had to ask Terry Nation whether they could use the Daleks after a certain point, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
True.
The BBC bought the copyright to the design of the police box from the London police, man.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Ah, I see. Every time they wanted to use, say, for the story Regeneration, the Daleks, they'd have to sort of pass the script through Terry Nation or one of his associates. Unless it wasn't suitable, they wouldn't be able to use them at all.
Yeah, in fact, Terry Nation wrote most of the Dalek scripts because that was part of the deal, man.
No, didn't he get sort of bored of the Daleks at one point? I think.
Yeah, but he had to write a first refusal. So if they want to do a Dalek story, he had to turn it down. He would write it. In other words, he could write it or he could turn it down, but they had to ask him first.
Ah, he had the copyright. He made all the money. I think that's the whole point, Pepper.
Yeah.
But the recently late Ray Cusack, the one who actually designed, not wrote he didn't design the script version of the Daleks, but he designed the actual what would be put into production, props, that sort of thing, and he didn't get hardly anything at all, while Terry Nation got made him a very rich man indeed, and even richer when he created Blake 7, of course.
Yeah, that kind of stuff happened a lot. In fact, the cat that designed the look of Batman didn't get no credit for it, man. It was the guy who created the character that got all the credit.
Ah. Oh, yeah.
Same kind of deal.
Bob Kane, of course.
Yep.
Yeah, he created the character, but he didn't design it. Another cat designed it, and he didn't get no credit.
I believe the same applies to the ones who created Superman. When they did the original Superman movie with Christopher Reeves, they weren't actually credited at first.
Well, yeah, they had to sue to be credited even in the comic books, because at first they weren't making no money off of it, and they got sued, or they sued DC Comics, and they settled out of court by giving them so much money and then crediting them as the creators from then on out.
Now, bear in mind, everyone, this is coming from Pepper the Clown. Of course, yeah. And another example, yet again, which would lead to decades later. There was this feud. Stan Lee had his name on Spider-Man comics, but Jack Kirby didn't. And they also created, I believe, the X-Men together, but yet again, he didn't get a credit at first.
Yeah, but Jack Kirby didn't have nothing to do with Spider-Man. That was Steve Ditko.
Ah.
But yeah, you're right. He did help him create the X-Men and the Avengers and all the others. But it was Stan Lee and Steve Ditko that created Spider-Man.
And copyright, of course, does mean that at the end of the Trial of a Time Lord, when the original Part 13 was actually basically not available due to a falling out between John Nathan Turner and Eric Saywood. He originally wrote the very last episode of that when Robert Holmes was died, basically too ill to do it, and died. And because of that falling out, he wouldn't allow John Nathan Turner to use that script because it was his copyright. So the two, Pip and Baker, had to do it. And the best example, most recently, the genesis, I would say, of what was to come in the new series in 2005, of course, the characters of Grace and that Asian companion in the Doctor Who TV movie, they're not allowed to be used in Big Finish audios.
No, they're owned by 20th Century Fox.
Yeah. So copyright can be a right pain in the arse, even to big corporations like Apple, the BBC, and legendary comic strip character creators.
Yeah, in fact, it put Fawcett Comics out of business altogether, man.
Really?
Yeah, because they had Captain Marvel, and DC sued them saying Captain Marvel was a copy of Superman. And it went on for years because Captain Marvel was out selling Superman. But DC won, and Fawcett had to quit publishing Captain Marvel. And in the end, DC Comics ended up owning the character.
It's funny you should mention that, because I was watching this YouTube video of all the cutscenes from God's Among Us, isn't it? A sort of fight them up, beat them up DC alternative reality thing featuring Superman and Batman, all the famous characters. Yeah, God's Among Us, Injustice. And in that, Captain Marvel is called Shazam or something like that. And there's some copyright issues with that.
Yeah,
and also there's the same reason why Batman and Superman haven't ever appeared in a film together, but they will soon. Anyway, sorry, Pepper, go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that during the period between when Fawcett quit publishing Captain Marvel and before DC got the character, Marvel Comics created their own Captain Marvel and got the copyright to the name. So then DC can't put Captain Marvel on the title of the book. They could only put Shazam, which was the magic word he used to change. But they couldn't call the book Captain Marvel because Marvel had already swooped in and got the copyright.
Oh dear.
Now Stan Lee, baby.
Here's another good example. What was it? I think it was... which TV show was it? Was it The Twilight Zone or something like that? No, George Lazenby appeared as JB in a TV show that I can't quite remember properly. It might be the A-Team or something else like that.
It was Return from the Man of Uncle.
Of course, yes.
Man from Uncle.
Well done, Monk.
Made for TV movie, which was actually, I thought it was pretty good, the movie. And he did. He played as JB. At the same time, Sean Connery reprised his role as James Bond in Never Say Never Again. And at the same time, there was another James Bond movie in the theater. So there had 3 James Bonds at the same time.
And that was around the 20th anniversary, wasn't it?
Yep.
You had JB, the second James Bond, all in, just in initials basically. And then you had Never Say Never Again, which was one of the unofficial... it was a remake of Thunderball, of course. And then you had the official James Bond film with... now, brain's gone again... Roger Moore in Octopussy.
You kind of got something like that now, because you got Sherlock, then you got the American Sherlock Holmes, and then you got the movie with Robert Downey Jr.
But I presume Elementary, the US version, which, let's face it, is just trying to, some would say, sort of milk off the success of the British one. They're both set in modern day, well, in the case of Elementary, New York, isn't it? And London in Stephen Moffat's, the producer of Doctor Who. I mean, he seems to do everything nowadays. In that Elementary version, though, they do have the same copyright, except they've changed things quite a bit. Watson is an Asian woman, and I think that's rather clever in a strange way. As a non-Caucasian puppet, how do you feel about that sort of change in, the American version?
I don't like that, man. I don't like it when you change characters' races. I think you should leave well enough alone. I wouldn't want to see a white dude playing Shaft or Superfly. And by the same token, I wouldn't want to see a black dude playing Doctor Who.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man.
Fancy you should mention that, because that's our next subject. So, according to Neil Gaiman, everyone, that's the writer of probably one of the best recent Doctor Who episodes, The Doctor's Wife, which is basically, of course, about the TARDIS, the longest running companion ever, apart from fans. He said in an interview recently that there's all this bullshit about Doctor Who being racist, apparently, according to some people like the feminist Laurie Penny, who's Penny Red on Twitter, who I've spoken to a few times, and they've been saying that Doctor Who's racist, not enough black characters, and that's what this study by all these feminists said a couple of months ago. That made many Doctor Who fans laugh out loud. But oddly enough, Gaiman claims that just like the 11th Doctor casting, yet again, black actors have actually been approached for the 12th Doctor and actually turned it down.
Well, he actually said a black actor. He meant just one.
Oh, I see.
He didn't say plural. According to denofgeek.com, Neil Gaiman wrote in his online journal, "Would I like a person of color as the Doctor? Absolutely. I have no doubt there will be. I know one black actor who was already offered the part of the Doctor and who turned it down." He didn't say who the black actor was, but later he said, to clarify, he was not talking about the role of the 12th Doctor. He wrote, "Do you think I have anything to do with the casting Peter Capaldi, or with who gets the part, or what happens in Doctor Who? I don't. I have no secret insider knowledge. I am not part of a mysterious casting cabal. I'm the author on a book tour. No, the black actor didn't turn down the role of the 12th Doctor. There have been many Doctors cast over the years." So it could have been turning down the role that Matt Smith got, turning down the role that Tennant got, but it's not the current Doctor.
What do you think about that, Pepper, then? Because what we're looking at the moment was this web page, and it had 3 potential actors it could be, well-known black actors.
Well, I think it's silly, man. I mean, the Doctor's a white dude. Shaft is a black dude. Superman's a white dude. You don't want to be politically correct and change a character just to satisfy a few fanatics, man. Next thing you know, they'll be doing Shaft with a white dude.
That's a good point. I wouldn't mind seeing a black actor as the Doctor, personally. And, it has to be said, like the argument, for a female Doctor, technically, the Doctor and the Time Lords are alien. Now, we don't know precisely how or how do they decide who gets regeneration? Is it available to all, Time Lords, or is Time Lord itself like a sort of, aristocratic title, like Lord or Duchess or something like that? But they're alien, so logically they can regenerate into any form. But you could have Time Lords, especially in Doctor Who comic strips, regenerating into alien beings, alien humanoids. So logically you could have a black or female Doctor.
Well, I mean, that don't make no sense either. Why do they even have genders if they can switch? If they could be switching back and forth, they shouldn't even have gender at all.
Good point.
Kind of crazy ass evolution would that be?
How would you
have a female Doctor in the future? That will kill the show.
No.
Well, Romana, when she regenerated, she did regenerate into an alien life form. She regenerated into Princess Astor, who's not Gallifreyan. So you could say we already seen it. A a Time Lord or Time Lady, regenerate into an alien, but she kept the same gender.
That was at the start of Destiny of the Daleks, and in that, she literally went through several different species and even size and shape.
But
now there is a
but
line.
All the ones she chose were the same gender and same color, for that matter.
One of them was like silver or blue, the little midget one.
Yeah, sort of alien type one, like I was saying. Yeah, that's right, Pepper. And like I was going to say, there's this brilliant line by the 10th Doctor in his first introduction story, where he points out that in the first 12-13 hours of regeneration you can presumably sort of change your mind, so to speak, because he has his arms chopped off and there's residual regeneration energy. So maybe that's what we were seeing in Destiny of the Daleks. She was literally minutes into a regeneration, had plenty of hours left and plenty of sort of leftover energy, etc. So perhaps the Doctor, if he wanted to, could sort of quickly shift through forms. It wouldn't be wasting regeneration, just simply quickly altering the shape of the one that it would finally settle on. So not using up lots of regeneration, just sort of like spinning top. You see colours changing and stuff. You know what I mean, sort of thing. Like a sort of little loophole in the regeneration. Sorry, Pepper, go on.
The only problem I got with that is, alright, remember when 9 regenerated into 10, and then what's her name?
Rose,
said to change back. He said, I can't change back. But Romana regenerated into Princess Astra. Then she went through 2 or 3 other bodies and then went back to Astra. So she can change back.
That's because Tennant's doctor was
in the first few minutes.
Tennant's doctor was just incompetent. There is a fan made series on YouTube about the Doctor, and he's black, and after the 8th Doctor, McCann's Doctor, regenerates, he regenerates into this black Doctor, and you find out that he's a Doctor that's not supposed to be. He's in between regenerations. Pretty interesting considering what's going on right now in Doctor who John Hurt is. It's an ongoing series on YouTube. I think they have 5 episodes out right now.
What was the name of that cat, the black British actor who played in Chef? Lenny Henry. He did a spoof where he played the Doctor.
Yeah.
So we actually have had one, technically. I'd love to see that, a scene just like Destiny of the Daleks, where the Doctor's sort of shifting quickly before the regeneration sets, and you see all different types of people appear, just like in the bit where the Doctor's offered the chance to look at possible regenerations in the war games. Same sort of thing, really.
But the Doctor,
I've just had a thought, Pepper. The war games. Sorry, you can say what you want to. I'll be briefly pointing out one. The Time Lord seemed to be able to predict in that scene that what could potentially be his next persona. Anyway, go on, Pepper.
Yeah, you're right. But see, that's what I was going to say. The Doctor seems like he can't pick out what he wants to look like, because he said that before. He's like, that's the problem with regeneration. You never know what you're going to get. And yet all Time Lords and Time Ladies seem to be able to control it. So maybe he's just like, retarded.
Yes, that's one way of putting it. And there's another thing, they're time sensitive. They can see into different alternative realities and possible futures. So maybe, just maybe, before they regenerate, they can see all the possibilities of who they might be next. Therefore, they do have the ability, perhaps, to sort of some sort of choice of it.
The doctor always seems like he's surprised when he sees himself for the first time. I remember the fifth doctor, when he looked in the mirror, he's like, "Oh no, man!" And then the sixth doctor, he was all happy and stuff when he saw his reflection. It's like, and even the fourth doctor, he's like, "I don't know about the ears, man. What do you think?" So I don't think he knows.
Even the ninth doctor said the same thing about his ears.
Yeah, it's like he don't know what he's going to be, and everybody else does. Maybe it's because he's a renegade. Maybe to punish him for running away, they did something to him. Remember that time they took away his ability to control the TARDIS? Well, maybe they took away his ability to control his regeneration.
Sort of like a class type thing if you sort of disgrace the class or something. Interesting. And now, of course, there's this fact that instead of a fresh ninth Doctor having regenerated out of Paul McGann, it's actually presumably out of John Hurt. All those fan theories, and that's finally been completely chucked out the window, really.
Yeah, but this means that if it's true, it means Peter Capaldi is the 13th Doctor, which means that's his regeneration, baby, unless they come up with some kind of answer for it.
Yeah. Interesting that is.
That might be why Stephen Moffat did it, because maybe he wants it to be the 13th, because he might have a story idea about that, and he's afraid that if he didn't slip one in, he might not still be showrunner when the 13th Doctor was around.
Maybe we've got the whole regeneration thing wrong, Maybe it's not a case of Doctor 1, 2 or 3, just every regeneration literally is like a facet. It's not really a case of numbers at all. Perhaps the only reason the Doctor uses numbers is because the TV show does. Otherwise it'd be confusing. And then there's another thing, everyone. Since the Doctor meets his past selves all the time, a past self would consider, Doctor 2 in the 5 Doctors would have seen number 5 as a future Doctor. So maybe in a fixed sort of timeline that hasn't been altered anything, the Doctor meets his future self. The next one is going to be just like David Tennant's Doctor is going to in the 50th anniversary. He'll know precisely what he's going to look like next, unless of course he gets made to forget or forgets or whatever.
Well, the second Doctor remembers the third Doctor, because you remember he said to the Brigadier, "My replacement wasn't very promising either." So he obviously remembered the third Doctor.
I see.
He also remembered him when he met up with him again in the 5 Doctors.
Yeah.
So if the next Doctor was a complete fat bastard, then he's probably going to be dreading it, isn't he? Yeah. Oh God! Back on the exercise bike, everyone, or something. Here comes the carrot juice again.
Did you ever notice in the War Games when they was giving him a choice of faces, one of them looked a lot like Tennant?
Yeah. The War Games had black.
That was probably made before Tennant was born.
It was. It was just a weird coincidence, because he even had the sideburns and everything. It's the one the Doctor looked at and goes, "Well, he's too thin, isn't he?"
Had a very elderly looking one in that sequence, and a black Doctor as well. So even in 1969, when you wouldn't have seen that many black characters on UK or American television,
I don't remember no black Doctor.
Yeah, he looks like Fat Dominoes or something like that to me. But even then, they were suggesting, yes, one of his possible Doctors that he could have chosen to be was a black dude, African American.
Yeah, you know what the big problem with a black Doctor would be? Seriously, man, he can't go in the past and make his make his ass into a slave.
That's a good one.
If he travels back to 1860s or 1840s Alabama, he's gonna be picking cotton on the old plantation tonight, baby.
And that's the problem, isn't it? The problem
Yeah,
is...
same thing for a woman. If he goes back as a woman to the 1800s, they ain't gonna be listening to her. They be like, get in the kitchen, bitch.
The doctor, she's trying to save Victorian London. Well, Lady Vastra has control over the situation, but that's a bit of a cop-out, really, because historically women would be, if they're telling men we're being invaded or something, they get locked up in a mental asylum.
Yeah, but Lady Vastra's a big-ass lizard.
Yeah.
They don't want to argue with that. She pulls that mask up, they're like, damn!
If it
A
was
regular-looking woman, man, they'd be like, get in the kitchen.
if it was a Chinese lady or woman, it'd be even worse. Historically, they would have
she'd
been...
be doing the laundry, man. She'd be doing the laundry.
There's a difference, really, between, suspending disbelief and just not being logical in historical terms.
Yeah. Just like in that Captain America movie, they showed World War II with a black sergeant commanding white troops. Hey, man, no. They didn't integrate the army until 1947, man.
Well, there were some black soldiers, as even in the American Civil War, weren't there?
But they were not giving orders to white soldiers. They had no white soldiers. The army used to be segregated.
So really, all these people asking for a black doctor, the writers would have
to just
come
not
up
think.
with, unless the TARDIS is able to change the perception of people in the same way that they go to an alien planet and they can speak fluently, just like the translator in Star Trek. But instead of seeing the Doctor as black or a woman, the people there see him as white, a sort of like quantum leap.
Well, then what's the point of a black doctor? Then there ain't even no point in getting a black doctor if that's the case. Because he might as well just go ahead and get a white one if he's going to be... It'd be like quantum leap. Everybody be looking at him, he'd be looking different to everybody.
Yeah.
That's quantum leap, man.
That was rather clever, because that did get around the, different people in different periods of time were being treated differently. But the only snag is, that was because the mirror image and what people were seeing anyway was the original person he'd leaped into and had swapped over with. But with this, he's in a fixed regeneration. Unless he had the sonic screwdriver sort of change his appearance, sort of project an image around his face or something, I don't know.
Yeah, but then you'd have to hire some white actor to come in to show us what the people in the past was seeing. What's the point, man? They so worried about being politically correct, they're not worried about being historically accurate, baby. You got to
And this is from a black puppet, everyone.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you flat out, that's the way it is. Just like I wouldn't want to see him do Shaft or Superfly with a white dude. That wouldn't make no damn sense neither. Some things are the way they are, and you just gotta accept it and move on, Jack. If you go back and try to change everything to be socially correct for the present, you're gonna mess up the past and the future.
Nobody said that Watson been changed to Lucy Liu as an Asian woman from a white middle-aged bloke was racist, but if they did the same thing to they did a new biopic of Malcolm X and changed him into a white person, there would be an almighty shit bomb bigger than Godzilla taking a crap.
Politically correct people, they think everything's alright as long as it ain't white. But let me tell you, man, some things are what they are. If you want a black Time Lord, create a new one.
Yeah, good point.
Change an existing one. Why would you change it? You could just make another one. It's just like a character, man. You take a long established white character like Perry White. Why turn him black? Why not just say Perry retired and bring in a black dude to be the new editor?
I'll tell you something though. That Idris actor, the one who's in Pacific Rim, I have thought since they've mentioned Superman versus Batman, I saw this picture after it was announced, and it reminded me of one of those pictures of Batman in his costume, looking tense and moody, and he would be a brilliant Bruce Wayne Batman. I swear to God, I don't think that would be at all impossible to have a black Batman at all. I really don't. Oh dear. And the shit hits the fan.
Well, it's the same thing, man. Why have a black Batman? Just create a new character to be the black dude. Don't go back and change an existing character. I mean, you could change any character into something else, but why? Why go back and change it? Just create a new one. There's no originality anymore, man. They just want to change what already exists. Just like make movie number 37. Instead of creating a whole new franchise with a whole new movie, they just want to do sequel after sequel after sequel, man. Ain't no originality no more.
I just thought...
I mean, what if it had always been like that? We wouldn't even had Superman. It'd have just been like The Shadow 3, The Shadow 4. You know, I mean, get original.
I just thought his acting and his character, seeing him in previous roles, would make him perfect. He'd take Batman to an all-new darkness level, you know. And,
why couldn't he be the Black Panther?
Well, why does he have to be the
Black Panther's very Batman-like.
I just think he would be
give
brilliant
a black
Batman.
character.
Yeah. I mean,
well, why not? But he's not white.
You'd have to change everything about the Wayne history. How did Bruce Wayne's family get rich? His father was a rich doctor, but considering the times that his father lived and grew up with, it couldn't be black.
Perhaps he was in charge of Twinkies or something.
I mean, why don't you take, okay, if you want to promote a black character with a black actor, get the Black Panther. That's a Marvel superhero. Do a movie about him and build his character up and make it popular. I mean, right now nobody know who he is, but you make a big movie with the Black Panther and he might get as famous as Batman. You don't need to go back and change a white character into a black character. Just take a black character.
It would be just a masterstroke to have a black Bruce Wayne. I just think he'd be perfect, purely for acting reasons. And there are some characters. Malcolm X to a white person would be ridiculous. Yeah, as he said, Doctor Who to a black person wouldn't be impossible, but it would raise a few problems. But anything that's never really been specifically pointed out that it has to be white can be tweaked, I suppose. But anyway, that was
character. Because the next thing you know, they're gonna want to do a black Superman, and then 50 years from now, there won't be no more white characters. Everybody
They've already
black
got that. He's called Superfly. He's faster than a locomotive, more powerful than a brother. What's that up in the sky? It's Superfly.
Yeah, exactly. You just create something original, man. Do something original. Create an original black hero. Or get one that exists and nobody knows, like Black Panther. He's a king in his secret identity. He's the king of Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
Shaft was.
There was a Dracula film out in the late 70s called Blackula.
Yeah, and you know what they call that? They used to call that blaxploitation, baby.
Yep.
Well, those movies took originally white ideas, if you'll pardon the expression, and actually just swapped it over. And Shaft was basically like the white Harry Carter, a sort of black James Bond, really, in some ways, just more grittier.
Yeah, but they didn't see that was cool because they created a whole new franchise instead of just doing a James Bond movie and say, all right, he's black now, black James Bond, baby, and then making Shaft that. Why do that when you can just be original? See, people used to be more original in Hollywood. Now they're scared to do anything new. They just want to take something old and tweak it.
Well, Live and Let Die, that was actually around the time of the blaxploitation movies, and that had a entire black cast. You had the main villain, you had that bloke with the metal claw, and the voodoo bloke who seemed to die and come back to life all the time, and it was featured in the Bronx, and that's one of my favourite Bond movies. Absolutely bloody brilliant. I mean, it looks a little bit dated with a very posh James Bond entry there.
Black man.
Oh boy.
It's just like Wild Wild West. They took Wild Wild West. They took James West, who was a white man on TV, and replaced him with Will Smith. And we supposed to believe Will Smith was a secret agent in the 1800s, man?
Oh, that's
what a load. Jack, he'd have been out there toting that barge and lifting that bell the first time he got off that fancy train.
So in
And see what that
closing-
does is it messes up history. You can't teach kids history if they're like, well, how we was slaves when I just saw Will Smith in the 1800s kicking somebody's ass.
Yeah, that's a good
You know,
point.
that's why kids don't know history. They see all this crap and they think it's real.
What you're basically saying is, in instances like you just mentioned, the audience has to take their brain out completely and chuck all historical fact out the window. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of this Doctor Who radio show. I have been, that's the way it goes, and the other three gentlemen were.
Stephen Price.
Pepper Clown.
Jimmy Porto.
And until next time, keep hooing, regardless of which colour or gender you are.